good afternoon, and welcome to our panel discussion on reimagining your cloud with enterprise transformation. And let me do quick introductions here. My name is Nidhi Srivastava. I lead the Google Business Unit at TCS, and joining me today are my two panelists. Please meet Sudhakar Lingineni, the CIO of CNS Wholesale Grocers, and Dr. Arsanjani. He is the director and head of the AI Center of Excellence at Google. Welcome, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have you. And I hope we will have a lively discussion, and we'll also give you a chance to ask questions of them. So I'm going to begin with you, Sudhakar. My first question to you is, what were the objectives of the transformation program at CNS Wholesale Grocers? What were your business imperatives?
Thank you, Nidhi. Good afternoon, everyone. I wish there was one reason. Of course, with anything that you do, when you talk about transformation, there are multiple factors that play a role into it. There were many things that we were looking at over the years. But what I would like to say is that what accelerated the pace of transformation is definitely we had a large customer who decided to move on and do their own self-distribution. That was a factor that made us think, how do we look at transforming the whole landscape of the systems and applications we had. Pandemic was another reason, which I think in the supply chain disruption. And there was also a lot of other impacts because we run around 35 warehouses, the impact of labor and operational costs that were involved. So all these factors in combination, I think, made us look at options, and then we decided to look at our foundation systems and our landscape too, which is something that a 100-year-old organization, which has grown organically and inorganically. There are a number of systems that were pieced together. So this was something we really wanted to take care of before we embark on a digital journey, is to make sure our foundation is solid. And I think a lot of these combination of factors went into reasons as, of course, cost and definitely plays a role. And that's the reason why we started the journey.
Yeah, and I can completely relate to cost being a key driver when you look at wholesale grocery business. But my next question is, why did you decide to go big on Google Cloud?
Yeah, so to be honest, we didn't start by looking at Google Cloud. I think from the very beginning, I think our strategy was we need to find the right cloud strategy. We never thought about saying it was Google or some other thing. So we spent over a year and a half working on the assessment. And I think we engaged TCS as a partner to look at our footprint that we had. They looked at everything that we had, both in our data centers and everywhere else. And the statistics and the data drove us to a direction that said we need to look at cloud as a solution, because there was a lot of opportunity for us to look at how we run our applications. And as we transform them, part of that was how do we also make sure that we put our effort and energy into things that are valuable to us in terms of business enhancement, business growth, and not work on things like hardware, software, patching, and look at all those aspects. So a combination of all that. So it's not a decision that you make overnight. There's a lot of thought that went behind it. Why Google? I think if you look at, we were looking for something that had a secure cloud infrastructure, and a large part of our decision making was driven by, data and analytics. We are a large company that has a lot of data. We know the world is moving towards data-driven decision making. So that was one of our larger decision making and why we chose Google. Not everything is in Google. We have a small portions where it is right to have in other co-location. So we made sure that the right workloads went to Google, and I think that's how the decision was made. certainly not something you make overnight. It's not working yet.
Help is on the way.
All right. So a big takeaway over here is that the decision to move to the cloud and the choice of the cloud is not overnight. So invest in assessment, something that you did. I think that was a very wise strategy. And every cloud, has a specialty. So look into what your organizational needs are and then do the mapping. So with that, I'll come over to you, Dr. Ali. My question to you is, if someone were to start their cloud journey now, what advice would you give them? What pitfalls can they avoid, as they begin their journey?
Excellent. So thank you, Nidhi, for that question. As Sudhakar mentioned, there's so many factors that you have to take into consideration to have a right fit for what you're doing in the cloud, what you're doing locally, and what use cases are supported with what workloads. So as the assessment that TCS has done provides that lens, that perspective of differentiating these capabilities so that it's not a one-stop shop decision. It is a fit for purpose decision. And so from the perspective of data analytics and the AI/ML transformation that is going on in the world, we are confronted with a situation where in maybe 6 months ago, we had 30, 60, 90-day plans. And today, we have to remove those zeros. We need 3, 6, 9-day plans. We need to accelerate fast. Why? Because our competition, whoever you are, whoever our company is, everybody has a situation in which they can be disrupted by a new player in this area. So the plans have to be strategic, but you need to act fast and fail fast and redirect and pivot. So in order to do so, you need a platform that is flexible and scalable enough so you can make mistakes, you can correct them, redirect and pivot. And I think that's a key component of, right?
That's right.
Of your assessment and your acceptance of the assessment.
Yeah, just adding to that, I think we didn't learn day one. There were situations where we had to do POCs, learn through that exercise, and figure out the right strategy and how we would put our workloads on Google.
Yes. And what I would add is that today we all know that there is one thing that everybody is looking for. That's generative AI. It's supposedly the answer to all the problems that everybody has, or at least companies. We all know that's not the case. There's so much more. Generative AI is a small part of it, but it's a key driver. And if your organization does not have a generative AI strategy, then that is potentially a risk factor. To de-risk that, you need a strategy for generative AI and see how you can accommodate workloads that fit within the generative AI use case, whether that's using conversational agents, whether combining structured and unstructured data for conversational applications or enterprise search, building applications that have the capability to understand more about your data, and not just one data set, but combine data sets from multiple areas and provide insights at a turn of a dime. And so you need domain-specific models that you may use your proprietary data within your own secure Google Cloud enclave to tune models for you that Google has no insight into. TCS may help you do that, potentially. And then you have the ability to take these models and create applications or have them access applications that are essentially geared towards your competitive advantage, but using generative AI? Back to you.
Fair point. The point that I really loved about what you said was that from 30, 60, 90 days, we moved to 3, 6, and 9 days. And I think it's amazing that the pace at which generative AI, I would say experimentation is going on, because experimentation will in time lead to adoption. And we are all living the world where you have a lot of use cases, and we are looking to the path of business case with the use case. So that's where we are. So with that context, Sudhakar, I would like to ask you that in your industry, consumer products, retail and distribution, this industry is known for a plethora of competing products. B, it's also known for somewhat fickle customer loyalty. So now my question to you is, how are you harnessing the power of data and AI to stay on the top of mind for your customer?
Yeah, I think thank you, Nidhi. I think as all of us know, the customer patterns and trends change over time. But more importantly, I think as the pandemic came across, I think the shifts were more dramatic in nature. And with the advent of technology, I think the new generation is looking at options that they can leverage. So, as an organization, I think we have to keep pace with those changes in the marketplace. We are looking at everything that's going on in the world out there. So I would like to break it down into my terms. There's a big buzz about Gen AI, but there's a lot that can be done with data analytics, the core AI, or I call it the core AI or your predictive AI, in combination with maybe Gen AI. I think a combination. Okay. Hopefully, you can hear me better now. So maybe I repeat that, or no, I won't bore you with that again. So I think what I was saying is, I think we shouldn't look at just AI being generative AI. I know there's a lot of buzz around it, but I think there's a lot that we can do with just the analytics and data insights that we can get with the data we have, and add on to that, I call the core AI or your predictive analytics. A combination of that is typically where an organization of ours would look to say, how do we improve the experience of a customer in terms of providing them with better customer service levels, looking at how we can do dynamic pricing that may help them meet the ever-changing the retail industry. And I think if you add generative AI, that can help actually think about it, a predictive AI will help you forecast and get the right product, right, on time, and make sure it goes to the customer on time. Now, if you layer that on with generative AI, it can make sure the product is desirable by the customer, make the attributes and things that are visible, the image. And so a combination of those two, I think, is where the power of analytics AI is. So if you look at the amount of data that we have, I think it's an ever ongoing journey for us. I think I would say we have probably just touched the tip of the surface even before generative AI was there. And I think going forward, I think generative AI will actually help in some of those cases where we had to write a lot of code and SQL, and it was very difficult to explain the results, and using the natural language capabilities. I think it puts the power in the use of, if it's done right, in the use of business, right? They can then leverage that to get a better outcomes.
Great. So I'll come back to you in a bit, and I'm going to ask you about what kinds of use cases are you thinking about. But before I do that, my question to you, Dr. Ali, is that what are the future trends that you see around AI? And you are heading the COE here at Google Cloud, and Google is known for data
and analytics, and now AI. So what are the trends that people can take away?
Excellent point. So the trends that we see currently as we extrapolate into the future, number one is something Sudhakar mentioned, which is essentially, how do I derive insights from data? There's a lot of noise in data. One of the things that generative AI can be used to do, not just to make products desirable, which I love the analogy, to personalize products, to provide context. Those are great. That's personalization. The other thing is to remove the noise from data. So imagine you have logs and you want to do anomaly detection, or you have multiple sentiments from customers about products. How do you filter all of that noise and gain insight from all that data? So generative AI is not just about generating some image. That's now a party gimmick. Everybody can do that. And of course, we do it very well. And it's important when used correctly, like, for example, on a marketing brochure, customizing an image to a particular marketing task, reaching a particular set of demographics. That's excellent. But beyond that, we have gobs and gobs of data. By the way, gobs is a new word. If you're not familiar with it, it's a very technical term. It means a lot of big unfiltered data. And with generative AI, you can actually tap into not just the structured data, but combine that with unstructured data, look into the data and derive the insight. The signals from that data can be pulled out with generative AI. So the data and analytics that Sudhakar was mentioning, excellent point. We will always need a SQL statement, for example, or a Cypher query, something like that. But we also need to be able to filter the existing mass of data for key insights. We can do that with generative AI. That allows us to do that. Second, so this is where data and analytics, Gen AI helps there. Second, in predictive AI, which is our traditional AI, we can do a lot to even do classification in these areas. So there are non-generative tasks that generative AI can do, meaning these models can actually perform traditional classification, clustering, regression. They can do certain things like that as well. The third category are extensions. We just announced extensions. Thomas Kurian announced it day one. I know many of you heard of it. So our partners like TCS, customers like Sudhakar, can leverage these extensions so that you can access data, you can access your traditional predictive AI in ways that you hadn't thought about before, and create plugins or extensions to this chain of specific tasks that you do in a generative AI chain. So those extensions become time critical, they become important for your business, and in order to derive business value from LLMs or other types of large models, you can create extensions that tap into data in real time, bring them back, do reasoning on that data, and then take the next step. So in terms of trends, I see an increase in the use of the full spectrum of accessing data, whether it's prompt engineering to gain insights from data, retrieval augmented generation, active retrieval augmented generation, forward-looking augmented generation, adapter tuning, low-rank adaptation, full fine-tuning. That spectrum can be leveraged via extensions and gaining insight.
Excellent, excellent. So what I'd like to understand from you, Sudhakar, is that how are you looking at the use cases? What are your key prioritization drivers? Are you looking at customer experience, new products, new services, or cost efficiencies as you look at your backlog of use cases? And what are the ones that are bubbling up to the top? Because what I'd like the audience to get from this is that in the retail and CPG industry, what could the use cases look like? Because everybody's, hunting and, they have their own list, but, there's something to learn from each other.
Yeah, so like you said, we have a long list, and if I let business drive it, they want everything tomorrow, which is certainly we all know is sometimes not possible. You have to prioritize those. So I'll just generally break it down into two sets, right? So like you talked about, predictive AI. So we have a long list of things that we want to do under that category. We have already looked at forecasting as being one of the means where we can apply the predictive analytics and do a better job at it. Supply chain optimization, route optimization. We have a fleet, right? Things like that. And then I think if you also look at uh, very simple things that we all think, it's a given is within our own employee productivity, right? There's a lot of automation that we can do once we understand how the flow of data, the repetitive steps people do, and we automate those. Now, when it comes to generative AI, and I know it's a buzz, and I know that's where most people are focused on. I think we are looking in this in the areas of how do we leverage like enterprise search within the organization, right? How do we? There's a lot of plethora of information within the company. Right? If you take just IT for instance, we have a lot of contracts that we have from various vendors that are stored somewhere, and it's when the time is there, we miss out on critical aspects of it, or we don't look at the renewals, and the search is very manual. We have to go and look for it. So one of the ways we are trying to see we can use generative AI is to go build like a chat bot or a front end. The users can just, for example, I can type in and say, show me all the contracts that are coming up for renewal, or show me anything that has the following terms or the same liability clauses or something like that. Do all the contracts have the same liability clauses? So all those things that are very manual in nature, is to time taking now, can be generative AI can be used for that. So we are using IT as the test bed. Right? Once we understand that, we will likely extend it to all our supply agreements, all other contracts outside. We are also looking at it from a content generation purpose. Right? We have our B2B portal, our consumers, customers come in there. So we're looking at how do we leverage generative AI to make the virtual chat bot a feature that we don't have to go and search for information. We can let our partners or our customers find it when they come into chatbot. They can ask for what they need. So most of the common tasks that they ask for is they want to fill out a credit memo or look for an invoice. They're looking for a specific invoice with a specific information. That's all manual tasks now. Now think about the world where the enterprise structure is built in such a way. Of course, you need guardrails, and they're able to ask that question, and the system provides them with that. You don't need human intervention, right? So I think there are a number of use cases that I can keep going on with, but maybe we can come back to it. I would like to know from Dr. Ali what he's seeing from other customers.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. You're right on. But what I'd like to kind of footnote to what Sudhakar was saying was that the chatbots that we had 6 months ago in the industry are very different from the chatbots or virtual agents that we have today. They're very different. Both are called chatbots, maybe virtual agents. The term agents might be more appropriate, but they are completely different. Before, we had to identify what the utterance was, map it to some intent, then take some action. A lot of this process was arduous and manual. But with large language models under the cover, a lot of this back-end process, the mapping of utterances to intents, the taking of actions, the translation of an utterance into something that can actually be answered and pulled out, completely changes the game. Creating these flows, these dialogues, becomes completely much easier than we were able to do before. So it really lowers the barrier entry to the internal productivity that you mentioned within a corporation. Second, so yes, definitely customer service, external or internal. We see that as a top use case. The other one is basically the combination of enterprise search, which is search within your domain, combining your structured data and unstructured data together, pulling all relevant information from wherever it's at into a structure that you can make a decision on. This is very critical because in the past we had limited access to certain information points. Thirdly, code generation, just developer productivity. Today, developers are not writing everything from scratch anymore because you get whichever development environment you are. We have Cody as a code generation. You can fine tune it with your capabilities. So those three are top of mind. Of course, there are generative tasks for personalization that I would say are the fourth one, which are making things relevant to your end customer on an as-needed basis. So I'd say those are the top four.
And what kind of skills should people invest in? So something, for our audience to take away over here. Skills, what kind of skills would you recommend looking at?
So I listed some across the spectrum of how you do, for example, retrieval augmented generation. How do you create an extension? So here's an example. You ask a language model, where should I go for a picnic today, let's say. That depends on the weather, right? The language model that was pre-trained, it can't know about the weather today. It was pre-trained. Even if you gave it the weather in that day, 6 months ago or 1 week ago, it has no clue what the weather looks like. So you have to go to a credible source, extract information, hand that off to the language model for it to say something. You may have to add additional quantities of data to it from internal and external sources. So having the ability to do retrieval augmented generation and the ability to write extensions in a chain, those three skills, I think, are critical.
Okay. Very good.
I'll add a fourth one, sorry.
Yes.
This is the big one I forgot, which I always emphasize, creating domain-specific models.
Yeah.
Tuning the model, not full fine-tuning. At Google, we provide the ability that yourselves, TCS, can tune your models for you, our partners, that are very low-cost tuning of your models for very specific domains. And that way, you don't have to do as much prompt engineering. The models are ready and reactive to what you need for those particular domains. So that's the fourth one. Sorry.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question for Dr. Prompt engineering you mentioned at the end. I hear a lot that we need people with that prompt engineering skill. What is it all about?
Excellent. So prompt engineering is all about, it's like writing a software specification, right? And writing it in a way that is unambiguous. So that, and so it's not an easy process. Gimmick prompts are easy to write. We all write them all day long. But thoughtful, careful prompts that actually accomplish the desired result have a set of best practices you need to follow. So to your point, that's a skill that we need to work on.
Very good. So we are going to open up for questions very soon. But before I do that, Sudhakar, when you look at this transformation journey, and you've been on it for over a year now, what was the biggest challenge that you have faced?
Only one, right?
No, we can hear more.
No, I would say, any transformation journey, and this is no different. I think the biggest challenge, really, I will say, is the cultural resistance and change management. So for any organization that is 100 years, journey, people like to be on the status quo. They don't like change. So as long as, you have the support from senior leadership and they're all committed, like we had, and you have change management that can address the concerns of people, and especially make sure adoption happens, right? You can bring in the latest in technology, but if you don't make sure the people who will actually, the end users who use it, if you don't spend time and ensuring that they adopt that technology, I see there's no value addition then, right? And then you are just adding a technology to a stack. I think that, for me, is the biggest challenge.
Fair enough. And Dr. Ali, when you look around industry adoption, what are you hearing from clients in terms of what their biggest challenges?
In many cases, we see that the beginning orientation, the introduction has happened. They're onboarded. Now they need to take action. So there is, I sense a general ambivalence in companies where there's so many avenues they can pursue, so many options they can pursue, that they're confronted with a situation in which they're not actually able to move fast because there's so many options. It's sort of like you go to a restaurant and it's you have multiple buffets, not one buffet, multiple buffets. It's going to take a while for you to choose which one, and you're probably going to get very hungry. So the idea is we really need to have some of our partners, like TCS, like they did for you, provide some kind of a perspective, a lens to focus all those different initiatives in these end companies so that that focus can drive execution faster and fail fast, iterate like you guys have done, and eventually come out. And then, of course, you can sequence the next set of activities.
Very good. So there were some very, very interesting takeaways from the session. So the first one is, as you embark on your cloud transformation journey, take the time to do an assessment, make the right choice as you select the hyperscaler partner. The second thing is that very important to engage business and change management is something that has to be recognized as an important element of your journey. The third thing is change is coming fast and furious. From 30, 60, 90-day plans, you need plans that run in weeks. So prepare for the change, You have to tighten your seatbelt there. The fourth one is there is a backlog of use cases available. Do the testing, the proof of concepts, experimentation, build pragmatic use cases that will give you the business case for, deploying it into production. And the talent piece is critical. So invest on it. And with that, I'll encourage you to ask questions. I'll ask you to come to this mic here and ask your question of our panelists here.
This is not a shy audience, I know.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So Sudhakar, you mentioned about having 35 data warehouses, and now you moved to Google. It's been a year. Were you successful in building a unified data platform, or how did you make your analytic platform better?
So if I heard you right, I will summarize it. How did you make your analytic platform better, right? Yeah, so I think it's a journey. I will tell you, when we started off, data has a special place for me, and if people who work with me know, I keep saying, data speaks to me, right? It tells us what's going on in the organization, where the problems are. So if you know how to look at data and analyze, half your problems are solved, right? So we started the journey building what we call data lakes, right? And you all remember the data lakes, and soon they became data swamps, right? So you need to constantly work on them. It's not a one-time effort. Data governance, the simple things. I know we talk about generative AI, we talk about predictive AI, but if you don't have the basic data that is accurate and kept accurate along the journey, it's going to be very difficult to get outcomes that meet your goals. How did we make it better? I think we made a conscious decision that we will move our data from our current data warehouse into BigQuery. I think our vision has always been look at the Vertex AI and all the other things that Google is building around BigQuery, leverage that, not just for internal consumption, monetize it. I don't mean selling data, I mean generating value, generating insights, both for internal customers, which are a business, as well as our external partners, customers. Right? Just think about a world where if I can take all the data I have and tell my customer, you change the category that you're buying or a price and simulate it and tell the margin you would make, they would never leave a business. Right? That's where we want to get to, the stickiness, and help them provide that kind of analytics.
Very good. Great. Okay. All right.
We have another brave person here.
Perfect.
I have a question on master data. In our organization, the master data is scattered. You're able to hear me? So I have a question about master data. Now that's a big challenge in any organization to maintain it one place, being consistent about it. So what do we have in this generative AI to keep the master data? Anything relevant to that? Because if you don't have it right, the very fundamentals are not right, right? So you can't do any next level. So what do we have for master data in this generative AI? How do
You
we go
mean
about
large amounts of data?
it? Master data meaning the
Master data. Got
yeah,
it. I had
yeah.
problems hearing. Sorry. So the question is, what can we do about master data management, essentially, and how can generative AI help in master data management? I'll give you a short answer and then I'll pass it on to see how you guys solve the problem. Practically is better. My theoretical answer would be that entity resolution is one of the master data management problems. So you can leverage a combination of traditional data analytics, predictive AI, and generative AI to do entity resolution. And I think entity resolution solutions are critical to master data management because you have entities all over the place which are very similar, probably identical, but slightly nuanced. You want to identify them and make sure your master data is truly your master data. So I would advise looking at platforms such as ours, which allow you to conduct entity resolution in combination with the applications, the data, and the unstructured data you have. Back to you.
Yeah, only thing I would add is I think we cannot always look to technology for solutions, right? It plays a role, but a lot goes back to discipline on how you manage your data, the governance behind it. I know there's a tendency for us to look for technology to solve everything, but like you mentioned, I think technology can help us overcome some of our hurdles that we had in the past, right? There's a large amount of data that you need to look at. I'm not sure, we haven't used generative AI yet on those kind of applications, but I can generally talk about, basic analytics, generating exception handling for core foundational data. And that goes back to what I was saying before. If your foundation is not solid, it'll show up in multiple areas as problems, right? So I think if you are embarking on this journey, I would say look at your foundational data first.
Very good. Any more questions? Yeah, I see a couple of hands. Please. Come in. Yeah.
Question to you, Dr. Ali. You mentioned about...
We cannot hear you. Maybe you can turn it on, I guess.
Question to you, Dr. Ali. You mentioned about using Gen AI for non-Gen AI use cases as well. But there are cost considerations too when you kind of go that route. So how do you really make a decision there? How do you balance it?
Got it. So the question was, we had mentioned that you can do certain non-generative tasks in generative AI, and how do you balance the costs of doing predictive AI using generative AI? One thing that I want to mention and clarify is that I'm not necessarily advocating that we use generative AI for everything. Obviously not. We need the data analytics, we need the predictive AI, and generative AI as the icing on the cake, really. So our predictive AI would be under the bell curve. The 60% of what we should be doing is predictive AI. You have your 30-something%, between data and analytics and generative AI. So, but what you can do in many cases is, for example, if you're fine-tuning models and you would like to do classification, medical diagnosis, for example, is one example of that. You can create a very cheaply constructed, meaning it doesn't cost you much to generate that model or to tune that model, based on data that you have in your organization that would be appropriate for your use cases. And so that kind of parameter-efficient fine-tuning gives you the ability to do that context mapping, that classification really fast in ways in which, because if the predictive models are very good at predicting things they have seen pretty much or are close to what they've seen, whereas generative models, being highly probabilistic, can do a little bit more. But if you train them, their accuracy and their F1 score will go up. So I would like to strike a balance between some of those tasks that are purely generative and then explore some of those that pertain to some kind of fine-tuning of those tasks. for more traditional tasks like classification. But I'm not implying to forego the data analytics and predict. But thank you. Excellent point you made. Thank you.
So I think we have another question. Please go ahead. And yeah, I can see.
My question is to Sudhakar. So suppose you had a time machine and you can go back to when you started the transformation journey with the acquired wisdom which you have now, having traversed the journey for some years. What are a few things you would like to change?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. To start with, I would not like to go back. It was very tough to get the organization aligned to where we are now. But if we set that aside, it's a journey. You learn a lot. You always wish you did it earlier. As we went through the journey, there were decisions that we made or probably not right when we look now. So I think some of those things, that's where I think Dr. Ali was saying, and some of you are saying, we need to, try these things out, try fast, fail fast, so you learn from it. Don't spend a lot of time and money and then figure out it's wrong. I think it's always, in hindsight, it's easy to say I would have done things differently. I look at it differently. I would like to learn through the journey, adopt as we go along. The sooner we adopt, the sooner we understand where we're falling. I'm the first one to go and tell my executive committee that I made a mistake. It's a blunder and I need to change course. I think that ability to accept failure and move ahead, but it cannot be that you wait a couple of years later and then say I made a mistake. And certainly then I think you will have few takers for it.
Great. So, young lady, yeah, please come up.
Hi, I'm Lauren, and my question is, what do you guys recommend? Can you hear me? What do you recommend for partners who are building out their Google Cloud practice? How do you find your focus on what to bring to customers for Gen AI when they're kind of all over the place right now?
Can I repeat the question?
Yeah, yes.
See if I was correct. What capabilities should we bring to the market to help customers on their journey for generative AI? Because you said there's lots of confusion today in the market. Did I get that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll start and then you can augment. So I think the critical thing is to start with use cases that are top of mind, high value business use. What are the use cases that you would derive greatest business value from would be ranked. Here are the top 5 use cases, top 5 business value capabilities. And then derive experiments in those areas where you can have the necessary skills that Nidhi was talking about, using the requisite skills for those identifying, acquiring, unblocking yourself on those skills necessary for those use cases, and the tools necessary to accelerate your path down that road, and then exercising the MVPs for those use cases to fail fast. That's the progression that I would see is a successful progression.
The only thing I would add to that is in some cases, we actually partner with a few customers so we can get their insight as we go through that exercise of figuring out whether these use cases mean how much to them and what value does it add to them. You don't want them to be at the end of the cycle. Maybe somewhere in the middle of the cycle, you want to get their feedback early enough.
Very early, yes.
Great point. So with that, we are going to begin to wrap up our session over here. And first and foremost, I want to thank my panelists, Sudhakar and Dr. Ali. It was wonderful talking to both of you. Some great takeaways. And I want to thank each one of you for being such a wonderful audience. Great to have you here, and I hope you got value out of this session. I'll encourage you to take the time to provide us feedback. And with that, have a great rest of your day. Thank you.